This is Brian Roten, Senior Reporter for Hotel News Now. I'm here with Ken Cruse, founder and CEO of Seoul Community Planet and SCP Hotels. We're here at the America's Lodging Investment Summit. Good checking in with you again. It's been a year.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks for taking the time to talk to me today. And interesting conference as usual. Love to hear what your take is on the buzz so far.
It generally seems that everyone's in pretty good spirits. Things are going relatively well, and I think everyone's just waiting for conditions to really improve to get those deals done. So everyone wants to do it, but it's just so expensive. So last time we talked, we talked a little bit about the expansion of your hotels portfolio. Costa Rica, I believe, was a new addition. So what's been going on with your company since then? How's the portfolio doing?
That's great. Thanks for asking. We've just for background, we formed Seoul Community Planet back in 2018. So it's been about 5 years since we started with this idea of creating a new concept in hospitality, oriented around this idea of holistic hospitality. So the three values are wellness, social good, and then regenerative travel or sustainability. And we've built the brand around those values and a culture that supports those values. And we've fairly carefully and slowly grown that from one test kitchen in Colorado Springs to now 10 hotels today. We're in Colorado, we're in Pacific Northwest, the Northern California coast, Laguna Beach, Hawaii, and as you mentioned, Costa Rica as well. So we're through what I would consider to be the proof of concept phase for what has to date been more of a passion project of ours. It's something that we knew the world was asking for and the industry needed. We spent fairly lengthy amount of time figuring out exactly how to calibrate this brand. And now that we're at a point where we think we know what works and what doesn't work, we're going to scale in a thoughtful but much more proactive way. So take it from 10 to 20, 50, 100 hotels in a sequential market by market way in order to build networks of our hotels in the different regions that we've already got a presence in.
Gotcha. So as you're looking for further expansion, what are you targeting? I mean, what does it take to be an ideal location, an ideal property with I'm sure some renovation or some repositioning? What are you looking for to turn it into an SCP hotel?
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting question because our addressable market is fairly significant. On a base level, we appeal to what's considered conscious consumers. 9 out of 10 Americans identify with that label in some way. And as you move lower down on the age cohorts, people are not only identifying with that label, but they're acting on it. And so our demographic or psychographic really skews a little bit younger in the age cohorts from 25 to 50 really would be the best age demographic. And then the markets that we're looking for are going to fit with a variety of different criteria. Loosely we say, is this an SCP market? And it's a very ill-defined concept, but is it a place where they're going to embrace this idea of wellness and social good and sustainability in a thoughtful way? And most markets would fit that bill, so it's an easy screening criteria. We're also looking for hotels that exist today in some shape or form, but are not positioned correctly for what the market is asking for. So we'll go with smaller boutique hotels and what I like to call small town, downtown markets. Redmond, Oregon is a great example of where that's worked quite well for us. And then another product that works super well for us is coastal resorts. And that can be a little bit larger scale. That may be in the case of Redmond, we're about 50 rooms, plus a bunch of other ancillary revenue streams. On the case of a coastal resort, it may be 100 to 300 rooms. That will work well for us. Shifting back to the first approach, if we're going to a smaller market with a smaller hotel, we'll typically try to assemble over the course of time multiple hotels into that portfolio so we can more or less synthetically create an institutional scale hotel out of a bunch of non-institutional scale individual properties.
We've seen, and we addressed this at the very beginning, just wanting to do deals and really waiting for those conditions to at least get better. And we've seen way interest rates have gone. We've seen how it's been with lenders. We know that there's a good chance interest rates are going to drop 3 times this year. By exactly how much?
I hope you're right.
Yeah. And then we've generally seen inflation cool. I mean, it's still there, but it's not as bad as it used to be. So for the types of properties you're looking to add to your portfolio, for the deals that you're chasing, how has the environment been over the last year or so, and
Yeah.
from your perspective, is it looking up at all?
I love that question because 2 years ago, we looked at the overall state of play in our industry and we said, this is a wonderful time for us to be acquiring hotels. We've got a lot of really good hotels with great owners that are, needing to see some sort of catalytic change with how their product is positioned and represented to the market. And so we thought that there was going to be a fairly significant flow of deals into our wheelhouse, as the saying goes. And what we found is a lot of those deals were available, but people were willing to pay significantly higher prices for the types of hotels that we would acquire than we would be able to pay based on our underwriting discipline. And I come from a real estate background. I'm very focused on the idea that you create value in real estate on the buy. And so I'd say 9 out of 10, if not 19 out of 20 of the deals that we looked at over the last 2 years that penciled out for us ended up going to somebody else who was willing to pay a significantly higher price than what we were willing to pay. So our discipline has worked against us a little bit in terms of our velocity of growth. I think what we're seeing now is seller mindsets are now capitulating is maybe too strong of a term, but they're moving more toward what would be a warranted price point based on cost of capital, growth trends, all the expectations for what's going to be a fairly near-term turbulent market, and a lot more sellers are coming now to the table with more appropriate pricing expectations. So our view is that's going to lead to more deal flow for us, and hopefully over the last couple of years, our discipline is going to serve us well as we move now into this next phase of growth for the company.
Looking at your current portfolio, then, I mean, it's 2024 now. We're almost 4 years since what we would consider in the U.S. to be like the start of the pandemic, March of 2020. Pre-pandemic, we really saw this emergence of the concept of wellness and travel and hospitality. And I'm curious, just from what you have seen generally, and then also from the guests who are coming to your hotels, what are they looking for in terms of wellness during their stays, and how do you think that has changed, especially over the last few years?
Sure. Yeah. What we saw pre-COVID was this shift in overall tendencies and desires of modern consumers to stay on their own personal wellness journey when they're on the road, when they're away from home, whatever that may look like. And our goal is to serve that journey, whatever it may be, for those individuals. That doesn't mean that we're a destination spa product. There are some others that do a phenomenal job with that. Typically our hotels are not places that people go to advance or even initiate their wellness journey. However, Costa Rica is a good example where people actually do that. We just did a phenomenal retreat there last week that very well attended, just amazing, the outcomes of that retreat in terms of people's ignition of a wellness journey that maybe had been stalled in some way. So we certainly are doing more of that now, where we're facilitating a wellness path for individuals. But for the most part, an SCP hotel is just a place for somebody to come who is already on a mindful, conscious consumer wellness journey and continue on that lifestyle when they're on the road, instead of kind of hanging that lifestyle up as they leave. To answer your question about what has happened post-COVID, I think in no uncertain terms, that trend, that mindset, that valuing of a healthy lifestyle has strengthened as a result of COVID. I think many of us were reminded how precious and how tenuous our health is. And so, people are spending a lot more time on healthy lifestyles, which is a great thing for a brand like SCP.
F&B is really, I think for hotels, it's really turned around as a concept. Again, pre-pandemic, we heard a lot about like is, do we really want to offer like this much F&B? We're not really making much money on it. And then that was even a time when, like, you know, conceptual dining and gastro pubs and all this stuff was really big. So, in terms of wellness, what are some of the F&B trends that you're seeing, and what guests are looking for? We've seen like an explosion in terms of like mocktails for people who are still looking to, they want something a little fancier to drink, but they don't want the alcohol. And we've been talking about this concept now that we've heard about is dry tripping. I'm sure
Yeah.
you've heard of it, and it's a funny name, but I mean the idea of going somewhere for with that as part of your purpose. I mean, just from what your hotels offer, what are you seeing, and how are you responding?
First of all, food and beverage are so integral to hospitality. And what we found in some of our hotels, certainly the early iterations of SCP, where we didn't have a fully developed food and beverage program, we found that the guest's experience, certainly wasn't elevated to its ultimate potential. And so bringing food and beverage in a very thoughtful way across our portfolio is a big focus of ours. And doing it in a way that, again, meets people wherever they happen to be on their own personal journey is important. We made a few stumbles along the way when we initiated our food and beverage program. I was a big advocate of let's have completely dry options for people, and let's have only plant-based, locally sourced, seasonal, minimally processed food in our restaurants. And when done well, that can be an incredible dining experience for folks who probably don't every day eat in that way. It's just not the American way. It gives people a chance to sample what a lifestyle that's a little bit more elevated than perhaps what we all as individuals live by when we're on the road, and see if we can maybe make that work for us when we get back home. Point was, I said we stumbled. Well, we did, because that was just too much too soon for many of our guests, and so we've now dialed back our food and beverage program to provide a broad range of dining and drinking options and socializing options that will appeal to any number of different lifestyles, but are certainly skewing more toward that wellness-oriented mindset. So that means the food is very thoughtfully sourced, but we now have protein options. The food is very minimally processed and thoughtfully done, and it's done in a way that minimizes food waste. So not only is this a wellness-oriented approach and philosophy in how we run our food and beverage program, but it's also a sustainability and regenerative travel mindset that factors into how we provide the dining and socializing experiences, even to the extent that some of the drinks that you have in our hotels, whether they're mocktails or not, will utilize things like desiccated lemon rind. That is, the lemon itself had been used in a different element of our menu. You name it, there's all kinds of those integrations of the sustainability aspect of our brand with the wellness aspect of our brand, and I think that serves to further strengthen the guest experience and further define the SCP product versus some other options that are out there.
So I think we've covered the S and C part of your name, and let's talk about the planet part. Let's talk, and you just mentioned sustainability. I know that is a big part of your company's goal and operations, and we've talked in the past about some of the sustainability certification that your properties have achieved or are pursuing. So can you give us an update on how all of that has been going for your portfolio?
Absolutely, yeah. A couple of years ago, led with our chin a little bit and saying, hey, we're going to be a zero net waste company, zero net waste business. And if you think about travel in general, it's pretty wasteful. As we mentioned a minute ago, food and beverage alone is a big contributor to the overall waste load of a hotel. But it goes well beyond that. Some of the packaging that's used for the products that we're selling in our marketplaces, or the supplies that we're using to clean our rooms, et cetera. So every aspect of a hotel stay and a hotel operation stands to be improved upon. And so we've taken it upon ourselves to try to take a leadership role in that area. We've done that through a number of programs, but going back to your question about like the zero net waste and the carbon neutral, we worked with a group called EarthCheck to come up with some best practices in our hotels, and we also use work with an amazing consultant. Her name is Kathy McGuire, whose company's called 3 Pillar Solutions, and she just eats, sleeps, and breathes sustainability and best practices. And so through Kathy's leadership in particular, we've gone through each of our hotels and said, here's what a sustainability program looks like to not just create a neutrality in terms of our carbon footprint, but truly establish this idea of regenerative travel. So when you come to our hotel, you're making the place that you're staying, the destination that you're visiting, just a little bit better than it was before you came, through some of the thoughtful things that we do. As you're, I'm sure, aware, this idea of reducing your carbon footprint isn't just about redirecting waste from a landfill into recycling. In fact, recycling is not a super efficient way to reduce our impact on the planet. It's really about reduction. And reduction, again, comes mostly in the form of the food, how we're managing food and in our properties, and what we are actually putting into the landfill versus other destinations. And composting is a big piece of that, where instead of putting all this food waste into the trash, we're able to do on-site composting in most of our hotels now, and use that as an element then of a full cycle food program that results in a better, healthier local product that is also, utilizing the whatever minimal waste that we have from the food products that we start within our kitchens. We also, we go through and we weigh all the waste that's produced in our hotels. The average hotel guest stay generates about 2 to 3 pounds of waste per stay. And we're proud to say that we've reduced that in a significant way across our portfolio. We're at about 1.5 pounds based on our last measurement.
I was going to say 2 to 3 doesn't sound bad.
Doesn't sound terrible, right? And it's kind of the amount of waste that a normal person living an American life might generate. A normal person living in a different part of the planet is going to be far, far less. So unfortunately, our consumer mindset and culture has resulted in a fairly wasteful byproduct in terms of the amount of waste that fairly wasteful lifestyle that creates a whole lot of mess for the planet. So we've taken it upon ourselves to reduce that. The starting point is much lower, but then, to the extent that we still have waste that's generated, we use programs like our Pristine Makai program in Hawaii, which is a partnership with the Hawaii Wildlife Fund, where we clean up at least 2.2 pounds of waste for every single stay on the southern tip of Hawaii, which is unfortunately a receptacle for some of the waste that's generated from the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Most of that actually originates from the mainland or from commercial fishing activities. We're able to, utilize our leverage, if you will, as a hotel provider to result in a very positive impact on the environment. And every time a guest stays at our hotel, they know, hey, wow, I just made a little bit of a positive difference in the world around us. I didn't have to go to Camilo Beach and pick up trash myself, even though some guests are inspired to do that, and we love that. But for the most part, it's just by choosing to stay at an SCP hotel, you're engaging in that type of positive initiative for the environment. So the result of all that is we're actually carbon positive, if you will, and not just carbon neutral, but we actually have a negative impact, which is a double negative there. So a benefit to every time you stay at our hotel, you actually have a positive impact on the environment around us through those offsetting programs as well.
And we've seen sustainability efforts become more of a focus within hospitality generally, and we know hotels have been trying to do more in that regard, even if it's just a matter of we're trying to reduce the amount of energy and water we use because it's a cost savings. And I mean, either way, if your motivation is cost savings or improving environmental conditions, if it helps, it's still good. So just kind of curious of your view on that, especially knowing that the next the 12th edition of USALI coming out is going to have a new section on energy, water, and waste, and a way of actually benchmarking the usage and creation of that. So what are your thoughts on the progress of sustainability efforts in the hotel space generally?
Yeah, I think that it's very good. We all have more room to move, but it's been wonderful to see the entire industry lean into the idea we can do better. We can do a better job. And it's been interesting as we've dug into things, and I'm by no means an expert on regenerative practices, but every day we're learning more. We've realized that, hey, sometimes the cleaning products that we're using in our hotels, they're shipped from, halfway across the globe, and they have a lot of heavy water content, and a lot of those things can be shipped dry or as dissolvable sheets or what have you that are far, far cheaper to ship, have a very low carbon footprint just getting into our doors, and then have a lower impact on the environment if we're using green-friendly products in the cleaning. Energy efficiency is huge, and what you said is absolutely great. We don't really care what the motivation might be, but if you're saying, hey, we can save money and we can have a more efficient operation, and at the same time do the best we can for the planet around us, that's a great that's a great combination. And so we're glad to see that people are thinking in those terms. And a few years ago it was, let's change everything to low flow fixtures. Let's make sure we've got LED lighting throughout our plant. Let's make sure we've got our variable frequency drives implemented in the various equipment that we're using. You name it. I think many hotels have gone through that retrofit process, and now we're going to the second level and figuring out, okay, where else can we save on our energy burden and our water burden on the environment. And that's going to come in the form of additional solar, more efficient systems, HVACs, etc. Everything is moving in a really good direction for us, and we're happy to be on the forefront of that, but we're even more happy to see all the big players leaning in, as we just said.
Well, Ken, it's been great getting a chance to talk to you again, and thank you so much for joining us here today. And thank all of you for listening. Stick with Hotel News Now for further coverage from the ALICE conference.
Hi, I'm Isaac Colazo, Vice President of Analytics at STR.
Hi, and I'm Jan Freitag, National Director for Hospitality Analytics for the CoStar Group. Tune in to our new show, Tell Me More, a hospitality data podcast.
It's a podcast on the global hotel industry, its current trends, what we're thinking about, and where the industry's going.
And we like to have fun with the data too. Find us on hotelnewsnow.com or wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe today.
Thank you for listening. This podcast was recorded on January 23rd, 2024, and edited by Brian Roden. Go to hotelnewsnow.com for the latest industry news every day.